All right, folks, we are descending upon Salisbury, Maryland at precisely 3:15 p.m., August 15th in the year 2022, and you guys are listening to the sweet sounds of the Prop Culture Podcast. And as always, I am your host, Matt Trader, and to my left, as always, is my co-pilot, Mr. Shane Snoots. And ladies and gentlemen, we don't know where you're listening today, but if you're in a car, well, you better call up Goldie Wilson III and get yourself a hover conversion, because where we're going, we don't need roads. That's right, folks. Get out your hoverboards and strap on those Nike Air Mags real tight, because we are about to take flight with a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today the man who played George McFly in Back to the Futures 2 and 3. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you Mr. Jeffrey Weissman. Jeff, good to be with you today.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Shane. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
So Jeff, it is an honor to have you with us here today. Your video just went off, but it's an honor to have you with us. It's all right. So it's an honor to have you with us here today. And, we would love, I can't wait to talk Back to the Future with you all day long. Shane and I are both, huge fans. But before we do that, to keep up with kind of the theme here, why don't you take us back in time and educate our listeners on who you are exactly, and basically your whole, timeline in the show business and what led you ultimately to your role in Back to the Future.
Well, that'll take a few days.
That's all right. Well, we're here for a little while.
The condensed version, I guess.
I'm celebrating my 50th year acting. I grew up wanting to be an actor. I started in school in community theater when I was a kid. My parents didn't want me to be an actor, so they wouldn't allow me to pursue it professionally until I got out of high school. And they couldn't really tell me what to do, and so I started working on some major film sets, mainly to get experience, to see what it was like. And I had, all through school and outside of school during the summers, performed on the stage in everything from Shakespeare to contemporary off-Broadway musicals, and just sort of tried to channel my natural hamminess, wanting to be the center of attention, into more supportive storytelling. And once I got on the big sets of films that I was mostly doing background work on, FM, The Rose, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I learned that, it was really exciting to be on the major studio sets on their lots and such, but it ultimately was not rewarding as an actor. It was, just kind of walk through or do small bits. So I realized that to get the better roles, I needed to get better training. So I went to the American Conservatory Theater and to university up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And while studying towards my master's degree, I fell in an opportunity to screen test for the lead in a film at the time. It was called The Genius, over at MGM and UA. And the director of it, Martin Brest, who you know from Beverly Hills Cop and Son of a Woman, other great films, he had these open calls that I came in through, and he had told an agent that I was his favorite for the lead in this film. And the agent had just come out of the New York William Morris agency and opened her own agency in Hollywood. And she pursued me, and I signed with her, and then I eventually screen tested. The film had lost its backing, lost its lead actor due to death, and then it went back on track and renamed itself War Games. And in 1981, 82, I screen tested for that film with Ali Sheedy alongside about 5 other guys, like Dana Carvey and Eric Stoltz. They all tested the same day. And none of us got it. As we know now, it went to Matthe Broderick, who did a good job with it. I just really recently kind of, I don't want to say broke down, but I went to see it for the first time, and I thought he did a good job. I was now with this new agent and had to move back from the Bay Area to Los Angeles to Hollywood to be available for auditions. And slowly but surely, after many doors opening to me because I was sort of a hot item for screen testing for that lead, I landed a support role in the fourth episode, the remake of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet that George Miller directed for Spielberg's Twilight Zone movie, and started working. I haven't really looked back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That's a hell of a timeline too, to be honest with you.
I know watching some of your other stuff, like other podcasts you have done in the past. I think you actually competed with Broderick or a couple roles, correct?
Yeah, about a year later, after the War Games screen test, I got a call from a friend who was going to an open call at Warner Brothers and asked if I wanted to keep him company.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, not really. But he twisted my arm, and I went down, and we spent 3 hours in line and finally got seen by the casting director, who instantly recognized me. She said, I know you from, it was a Honky Tonk Man, Clint Eastwood film that I had been submitted on. And she goes, you're not right for this, but you're big in our files, so thank you for coming in. I was like, okay. And the next day, my agent called me and said, what are you doing going on an open call? I was like, I'm keeping my friend company. She goes, did you maybe have in the back of your mind what happened on War Games? I was like, yeah, I could have. Yeah, it was in the back of my mind. She says, good, because they're interested in reading you now for the role that they were casting. I was like, huh? And she got a hold of Dick Donner's office and got the last available script while he was location scouting in Italy. The next day after reading the script, I went into the vice president of casting at Warner Brothers, who asked me what I liked in this film called Lady Hawk. I was like, I found about 19. And I at the age of 14, started doing immersive theater at Renaissance fairs.
Yeah.
So I had my medieval speak down. I performed in plenty of Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe and other Thomas Dekker pieces. And so she said, 19 scenes. I said, yes. She said, all right, let's do them all. And so I did all these 19 scenes from this wonderful script of Lady Hawk in her office. And she said, great. I'm going to speak with Dick Donner tonight from Italy, and where he's location scouting, and tell him about you, and we'll take it from there. I was like, great, thank you. And then I left and went out of town with my parents to Mexico for a couple of days, and came back, and my phone was ringing. It was my agent saying, where have you been? I'm trying to get a hold of you. I said, I was booked out. I said I was going to Mexico. Yeah. She goes, well, it turns out the actor that they want for that role of the mouse in Lady Hawk is asking too much money. So they're going to screen test you. I was like, okay, when? She goes, today. I was like, ah! And so I was on my way to the screen test, getting there easily an hour or so before my appointed time. And the phone was ringing just as I was locking my door, and I went back in. It was my agent saying, the screen test is off. Matthe Broderick came down in his price. I was like, ah.
Of course.
But these things happen, you know. It's a bit of a your connections, who you know, your experience, your training. There's a lot of timing, a lot of luck, especially now. You know, back then, I think for every lead role that a casting director puts out in the breakdown services, it was probably between you and about 500 other people.
Yeah.
Now with the advent of digital technology, the internet, and at-home audition possibilities, it's more like between you and about 10,000 other people. Yeah. It has gotten a lot worse.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how difficult it is to want to get into show business, you know, in this day and age. And it's funny because I was actually going to ask you before we jump into Back to the Future. I have two sons who are absolutely obsessed with acting movies out. I mean, it's pretty much all they do in their spare time. I mean, they're acting out the entire Indiana Jones catalog from front to back. Same with Back to the Future. And actually my son, I was telling you before we got on, insisted that I wear a suit on air today because he knew that I was going to be, or we were going to be interviewing George McFly. But before we jump into Back to the Future, do you have any advice for my kids or other kids who might want to get into acting someday?
What are your boys' names?
Monroe and McCallan.
Monroe and Callan?
Okay, Monroe. So Monroe and McCallan, and I actually got the name Monroe from Thomas C. Howe's role in a movie called Side Out. I don't know if you remember that movie, a volleyball movie years ago. I've had that name since I was a kid because I used to love that movie as a kid. So Thomas C. Howe ever sees this, that's where that name came from. And McCallan is because I like Scotch.
My buddy Mark Neely co-starred with him in, what was that called? They were roommates and wore blackface in it. Very taboo now. Something Man. Oh, gosh. Anyway, well, all right.
McCallan, like the Scotch.
McCallan
and Monroe. Yep.
And Monroe.
Yep.
If you want my advice from being an actor for 50 years, is if you can get something practical, if you can study something that you can make a living at first, that's the way to go. Because, like I mentioned, the competition is so fierce. It really is a very hard way to make a living.
Yeah,
I raised two sons as an actor, and it was scraping by a lot of the time. I got very fortunate by getting some live acting work that was sustainable for about 15 years in a theme park. But if you're relying on your TV and your film roles, and you're not extremely well connected, it's a very hard living to make, because you're paying a team of people working for you, your agents, your managers, your publicists, your support personnel, and your paycheck gets eaten up very quickly. And it takes a few years for casting to get to trust you, and they also need to trust your agent first. So it takes a while to gain the trust of an agent.
Yeah.
So once again, if you have to do it, if it's in your heart, then by all means do it. Get something practical that you can live on, and then do it in your spare time, but don't give up and keep your focus and keep improving yourself. Say that you can sing, say that you can dance, and take those lessons when you can, so you can back it up. Everyone can sing and everyone can dance. It's just how well. And a lot of roles will ask you that in auditions. A lot of roles, you'll need to know how to do your cold reading technique. You'll need to know how to listen with not only your ears, but with your intuition and with what is inferred in the text. I can go on and on. I teach acting, so come take lessons from me.
Okay.
Virtually.
I might take you up on that someday. They want to go to California so bad, and I take it that's where you are. But they always talk about wanting to go out there and seeing some of the movie sites and stuff like that. But you were talking about trust and how you have to earn the trust of the agents and the directors and the producers. So why don't we move on and talk about ultimately how you acquired the role of George McFly and how you were trusted with such a major role in what I call probably the most iconic, or one of the most iconic films of my generation.
Yeah, I loved the first film. I had worked with Crispen Glover in '83 before he got the first film on a film at the American Film Institute with Daniel Herlihy. And I thought Crispen was a fascinating actor and got his phone number and tried to stay in touch. And when Back to the Future came out that summer of '85, I was co-starring in a film with Clint Eastwood, a Western called Pale Rider. And I wanted to see what the hubbub was about the competition in the theaters that summer. And I was already a huge fan of Christopher Lloyd and Mike Fox. And when Crispen came on the screen, I was like, hey, I know that guy. He was doing a fantastic job. And I even called him up to congratulate him. So I was a huge fan. How could you not? It was such a great movie and so much fun. Yeah. And I had, in 1987, fallen into this work that I mentioned previously, playing Hollywood Universal Studios in Hollywood at their theme park. So I was their first string Stanley Laurel of Laurel and Hardy. I put together playing Charlie Chaplin and put together playing Groucho Marx among other characters, Dr. Frankenstein. And the agent that had referred me to that kind of work called me in '88 and asked if I knew who Crispen Glover was. I said, sure. I told him we worked together, etc. And he said, do you think you're the same height and weight? No, he's taller and probably heavier. What's this for? And he said, well, they're looking for a photo double for a project for him. And I was like, well, the buzz about a sequel to Back to the Future had already been in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety. I said, for the sequel to Back to the Future? And he said, I'm not at liberty to say. I said, get me in there. Because my ex-wife was having our second child, and I needed to make more money to earn my medical coverage to cover the birth. So I was looking for any kind of work.
Yeah.
And I went and met with the assistant directors. I showed them my resume and mentioned how, I worked on some very big budget films like Johnny Dangerously and Crackers and Pale Rider, of course, Twilight Zone movie. And so they thought I was, I guess, professional enough to take it to the next level and talk to the director, Bob Z, about me. And then I was sent to casting. And I read the scene between George and Marty in the backyard, the clothes, the laundry.
Damn it, George.
And I guess,
right? that scene I got, yeah.
and I think there were a couple other guys reading for the role as well. And I guess they liked me enough, and they started sending me to makeup artists and hair people to have prosthetics fitted and hair wigs made and body cast for special effects made. And I was like, wow, I guess they're going to need George in multiple places at the same time. This is going to be fun. I even called Crispen and I said, say a good word for me. I left on his message machine. And I didn't hear from him. I was set to screen test in the young George makeup, which I can show you here if I figure out the share screen thing real quick. Here we go. So give me a sec. So this is the young George makeup, if you can see on your screen.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, wow.
And this Polaroid for hair and makeup and continuity, whatever, I grabbed because at the end of the shoot, they didn't need it anymore. As you can see from the profile, it's definitely based on Crispen's life mask.
Yeah. Absolutely.
From the front, though, it doesn't really look so much like him. That you can find other photos. Let me find one here. Young George. If I have one here. Yeah, there we go. And let's try to share this one. As you can see it from the front, it doesn't quite look right.
Yeah.
No, it definitely looks better from the side.
Yeah.
But I was, thinking that, they must need two Georges in some of these shots, like they needed Mike and his photo double, Kevin Holloway. When Kevin's on stage playing Johnny B. Good, and Mike from part 2 or Marty from part 2 is on the catwalk overhead, or vice versa when they're getting the reverse shots. And I screen tested in that young George makeup, and Robert Zemeckis asked Dean Cundy, what do you think, Dean? And Dean said, I think we got Crispen without the trouble. At which point I was like, huh? What does that mean?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
And it was my makeup artist who said, Crispen's out. You're gonna be George. And I said, they can't do. How are they gonna do that? They've got to have. I figured Crispen had a conflict with another film shoot or something. I wasn't privy to what was going on, nor did they tell me that they didn't have the rights to his likeness in my makeups. But we went to work in the 11th hour. Casting called my agent, and they negotiated my rate, and I went to work. And it took 4 hours a day to put on any of those makeups. Age 17, age 47 in part 3, age 77 in part 2 in the future, 2015. And So if I was needed on the set by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, I was in the makeup chair at 4 in the morning. And it was kind of odd, what was it like for me? It was very odd, kind of feeling like a scab. It was uncomfortable. Mike Fox looked at me in that makeup and said, "Oh man, Crispen ain't gonna like this." And
really, Michael said that.
Zemeckis would often refer to me as George as Crispen, which was really, I had to have a word with him. I said, "What are you doing?" Yeah. Not Crispen. We're gonna recreate his actions and scenes, so there's continuity in this. I didn't realize they were going to cut my work in also with close-ups of him. They don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, when part 3 came out, Crispen called me up and said, it was unfair what they did to me. And I said, "Tell me more." And he told me stories about Bob Gale making him cry in front of extras, how he was abused on the set, and blah, blah, blah. And when he told me that they never offered him any money for the use of his life mask, I thought that was pretty rude. It was. Yeah. I played Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin and Groucho Marx at Universal for many years, and they always paid licensing fees for the use of those characters of their likeness. And I knew that they needed to pay him something, so I offered him use of my photos and stories, and he got an out-of-court settlement for about $750,000.
Wow! So you guys remained pretty close throughout the whole process. You and Crispen?
Not really.
No.
He only called when he needed my help. Now he kind of poo-poos my work in the press. It's like, really? Okay.
Well, I'm sure it's hard stepping in after him, right? Like after.
Oh yeah.
It's big shoes to fill, A, and then B, it's just something that's like you're taking his role, so obviously he sees you as competition. Is that kind of how?
Yeah, I saw that, and then it was heartbreaking for me to know that he wasn't going to return. Little did I know that he was not only asking for more money than they were willing to pay him, but he was also asking for script approval, which, yes, Crispen's star was rising. He's brilliant in River's Edge and various other films at the time that were out. But I don't think he had enough cred, or his team wasn't strong enough to make the demands. Mike Fox's agent is a high-powered attorney. He anyway, being thrust into the deep end kind of was pretty amazing. I got a quick education, and it was really fantastic working on that set. The ensemble cast worked extremely well together. Bob Z cast very well in trusting his actors that he could trust to come up with bits. Mike Fox is the only actor I've ever seen call cut on his own work if he wasn't directing, if the actor wasn't directing. I've heard Clint call cut while he was acting in front of the camera and directing at the same time. But Mike hit his mark on a line or something, and then he said, cut. I didn't even believe that myself. Which, of course, Zemeckis had really no argument. He said, fine, let's just do it again.
Yeah.
But it's a rare thing when an actor trusts their instinct enough, has the director's eye outside honed enough that they know if it's working or not. And that's when I talk about listening. Listening is really key for authenticity in your work.
Yeah.
This is back to the kids.
Absolutely.
Hopefully Maurice in the studios listen to this when I try to cut things from time to time. But I'll tell you, Jeff, one of the impressive things about you taking that role over is the fact that not only were you asked, and this is my opinion here, not only were you asked to play an iconic role, but you actually had to not only act the role out, but you had to act the way the role was already portrayed by another actor. To me, I think the challenge of that is amazing, and I think you deserve tremendous credit, because I don't think, and this is no offense to you, I think it actually just speaks volumes of how well you did. A lot of people don't know that the actor was ever replaced until later on, when the Blu-rays and the extra and credits started coming out later on, and it was unbelievable. I think it's a real testament to your skill set, honestly. So I got to give you huge props on that. Yep.
Do you think that the other cast members did they turn their nose up at you at first because you were coming in, you were new to the set?
Yeah, there was a certain amount of that. Like I said, Mike Fox was uncomfortable at first when he saw me in that makeup. By the end of the week, I was sharing a beer with him in his trailer and stories, hanging out. Leah, Billy Zane said he thought that Leah was quite fond of Crispen in even a romantic way. And she didn't really, I think she just kind of put up with me because of the situation. And it wasn't until really many years after the films came out when we started doing cast reunions that she, I think, appreciated me more. There was even a time when she introduced me to her mom. She and her mom had come on the tour, and I was playing Stan Laurel, and she said, "Mom, this is the actor who played George," but she didn't remember my name, even though we'd worked together for 5 or 6 weeks. But she, was a very big star, and I understand. I forget names.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the TMZ and press have used that as, they hate each other. I'm like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Leah's a wonderful person and a lovely actress and an excellent director now, and we get along fine.
So here's a question for you. So Elizabeth Shue was also another one that was, playing a recasted role in that as well, in the role of Jennifer Parker. Was there a special relationship between you and Elizabeth, being that you guys both had to take over iconic roles and replace, previous actors? Was any continuity there between you guys?
Elizabeth is just wonderful. She's just really fun. She's a lovely, talented gal. I think Zemeckis was in a rough place with not having Claudia coming back to reprise the role, and he had worked with Elizabeth on Adventures in Babysitting. So I think she stepped in to kind of do him a favor. And I just had a delightful time. Here's a picture of Elizabeth in my dressing room.
That's awesome.
I adored her. I thought she was just so much fun to hang out with.
Well, as two guys, or a guy who grew up in the 80s, I adored her as well. So yeah. I was a big fan of the Karate Kid movies and pretty much anything she was in, So, and I see the picture there of you as old George. And that was probably, I think most of your work in the movies was as old George. And one of the things I think they did was they hung you upside down, correct?
Yeah.
And I think it was to, I guess, throw off the audience to not let them realize there's another actor playing. But I think I had actually went and watched some stuff that you had said. And it was also because they were actually planning that for Crispen because he had a trouble staying on mark, right? Staying on in spots.
I've heard both those stories.
Okay.
I've heard that he would overshoot or undershoot his marks, and that the Bobs wrote that if he's on this track, that the ortholev goes from the outside the front door through the living room, through the dining room, the TV room, and into the kitchen, that they can keep control of him. And then I'd also heard it was too obscured that it was a different actor. In my script, those scenes of 2015 McFly Home, there's a rainbow of colors, and those colors are the pages that are the rewrites. In one version, Marty is in the ortholev. In one version, there's no George at all. There's they really didn't know what they were up against, whether they had Crispen or not, and if it was going to be another actor. A lot of the lines that they had given to George were then divvied up. I remember on set, Zemeckis saying, "Mike, why don't you take this as Marlene? Marlene, you take this, and Leah as Lorraine, you take this line." I was like, "Hey, I can do lines too. I'm a trained actor."
Yeah.
And so they gave me some of my lines back, and I was improvising a little bit. Some things they let me keep in. If you have the DVD on the bonus material of part 2, the pizza scene, I get to do my tribute to Crispen's laugh when Lorraine pulls the pizza out that's hydrated in 4 seconds, says, "George, rotate your axis for dinner." And I go, "Okay, 4," and do my golf swing. And unfortunately, that was cut out. that's where I'm in the body cast for that special effect to spin. That also banana fruit, please. Marlene gives Grandpa George a banana, and I try to eat a banana upside down, and the peel keeps slapping me in the face. So I thought it was pretty funny. I think Zemeckis thought it was funny too, but it didn't stay in. What else? Because outside the front door, my head was level with Marlene's bottom, and they put her in these orange hot pants and stuffed them a little bit. I thought she looked like she had a pumpkin butt, so I said, "How's Granddad's little pumpkin on the fly?"
That's where that came from. Really? That's great. That's great.
Improvised.
Yeah. That was
just. I needed to insert some comedy. I was scrambling for my creative life because I'm under all this makeup and I'm filling big shoes, and yet they're not letting me do stuff. It was awkward.
But
anyway, I have this footage. Would you like to see this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Very rarely seen footage. It was the making of documentary had shot me, but it was all cut out of the documentary because they didn't want Crispen to sue, obviously. So here, Nancy Vasta and the late great Sonny Berman are gluing me in. They glue me in for a couple hours and let us take a break for a breakfast burrito or whatever. Leah's in the chair next to me being worked on by Mike Mills, who was the foreman on Beetlejuice, and Marvin Westmore of the famous Westmore makeup family legends. Really great makeup artists like Zoltan and his wife and Kenny Myers, and a lot of really fantastic people applying Ken Chase's designs. Ken Chase, though, 1 or 2 days into the shoot, got hired. He was doing my makeup, and Zemeckis wanted to know when I'd be on set, and Ken mouthed off and said, "He'll be ready when I'm finished." And they weren't going to stand for that kind of attitude. So
yeah, absolutely.
Kenny was dismissed.
Wow.
Was it ever weird to kind of almost be dressed up like another person, like a real life person? Like they're basically making you a different actor, or like the actor previously playing the role. Was it different?
Well, this is the old George makeup that you're seeing me get into. As you can see, it looks like Freddy Krueger there.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
But then I'll come back and get painted and get the hair applied, and I'll be ready for work. But this is the young George. So yes, there was.
Oh wow!
There was this awkward being made up and feeling kind of. What am I doing? But I got to be the glue that kind of helped at least the kids believe that the story was the same actors, same characters.
So.
That's the song.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, look. There's Gale right there. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Exclusive footage there.
So beyond, your role in the movie, I know you're a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. So, one of the things I kind of want to do is talk to you a little bit about your fandom. I guess we'll start with this. Out of the entire trilogy, what's your favorite part, in the movie? Do you have a favorite scene? Do you have something that you think is extra more relevant than the rest? So, go ahead.
I'm asked that, which is your favorite episode, 1, 2, or 3, and I think hands down the first film is my favorite.
Yeah,
I love cowboy movies and all the inside winking at you, nudging jokes that 3 has, and I love all the excitement of part 2, and also that I co-star in part 2. But part 1 really was just such a great fun package all unto itself. So I'd say part one, especially the scenes, the comedy that Leah and Mike do together, and the comedy that Chris and Mike do together. Tom has some fantastic work. It's so well. Look at it. I mean, they shot it for 8 weeks almost with Eric Stoltz. So by the time Mike Fox became available and they got him, everyone had rehearsed their characters pretty nice. Before they went to shoot, Crispen and Leah and Tom did lots and lots of tests and improvisations. And I know I have on VHS somewhere those screen tests because they wanted me to study more of Crispen's work. And in it, they're honing their characters. There's one makeup test between Tom and Crispen, Biff and George, and you see Tom come up with the line, "McFly, what is that? Some kind of Irish bug?" It's a kind of revelatory seeing those screen tests. It's quite fun.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, for me, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I was going to say, for me personally, two has always been my favorite. Just because that was the first one that I ever saw in the theater. I wasn't allowed to see the first one in the theater because I was a young kid. My parents, thought PG might be too, I guess risque for me. So the first one, when I went to see it, it was number 2, and it was amazing. And I've always said that Back to the Future is our generation's Wizard of Oz, and that's just my opinion. And when Marty walked into the future for the first time, to me that was kind of equivalent to Dorothy walking in to Oz for the first time, when she opened the door into a Technicolor universe. I had that same type of feeling that I would assume that whoever, was a kid at their time that watched The Wizard of Oz for the first time probably had. If I had a favorite scene, I would say out of all the movies, the chalkboard scene in 2 is, I think, just one of the most brilliant moments in film history. I just think it's so unbelievable how he explained the alternate universe and how all that happened, and just watching Michael kind of go through that in his mind about how his greed could have completely destroyed the whole world. I thought it was dark. I thought it was brilliant, and to me, it's one of my favorite scenes in the history of cinema. Period. But sorry, I just want to throw that in there. So
no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I wanted to give you some trivia. A lot of people don't realize that Christopher Lloyd threw the original script when he got it in the garbage.
Really?
Oh.
He threw it in the trash. He explains that he had enough of Hollywood. Being on Taxi was enough for him. He wanted to do some legitimate theater. He had contracted to do a show with Colleen Dewhurst in New York. And he had told his, I think, girlfriend at the time, who became his wife and then now ex-wife, no stone unturned, and she, unbeknownst to him, had pulled it out of the garbage. Meanwhile, Colleen Dewhurst became ill, and the show that he was going to do got pushed a month, and then it got pushed a second month. And he started freaking out. What are we going to do? Meanwhile, Universal's looking at Dudley Moore and Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow, all these different stars of the day to play Doc Brown. Really would have been a different film if it was Jeff Goldblum and Eric Stoltz, I think.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be the same.
So, or I think Bill Cosby was even up for it.
Really?
So he was like, what are we going to do? I can't do this show now with Colleen Dewhurst being sick indefinitely. What are we going to do for money? And his girlfriend laid the script down and said, how about this? What's this? And that is how Chris finally read Doc Brown.
Did he marry that
a lot
girl?
of people. Yeah, he did. I think
better after that, right?
I think that's his ex-wife.
Okay.
You ask him sometime. Chris is still doing fan cons all over the world now.
We'd love to have him on sometime if possible. Yeah.
Do you know how Marty originally got back from 55 to 85?
I think it was through like the nuclear testing, right? Nuclear test site. Because I think they actually used the same scene in Indiana Jones 4, or the same concept that they were going to use in Back to the Future 1, right? And then that changed over time because they thought that, I guess, a refrigerator, because I think it was a refrigerator, right? They were supposed to time travel in.
Yeah, well, there's
cool.
sort of a mishmash of it in Raiders 4, since Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, were producers on the Back to the Future movies as well, and Spielberg. In the original version, that's right, the time machine was a refrigerator, and Marty would get into the refrigerator as the A-bomb is being dropped at the test site for the gigawatts needed. I'm not sure if, though in Back to the Future's version, it was a refrigerator at that point. I believe it was changed to the DeLorean, and Marty gets the DeLorean at 88 miles per hour under the A-bomb as it's being dropped. But because the producers had shot with Eric Stoltz and now wanted to replace them and reshoot the 6 or 7 weeks that they'd shot already, Sid Sheinberg, the VP of production at Universal, said, you got your boy, but now I need you to cut $1 million off your budget if you want him.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They were like, what do we cut? What do we cut? So they would save $1 million if they lost an entire location set up out in the desert for the atomic bomb blast. And I believe that's how the lightning hits the clock tower must have evolved. I'm not privy to how it evolved. When you have Bob Gale on or Robert Zemeckis, Bob Z on, ask them.
Yeah, right. Isn't it amazing though how when you're forced to restrict yourself like that, how much more creative you can get? I mean, because of that, the clock tower became the central point of the whole movie. I mean, from the 1 to even up to 3 when the clock tower was, rolled out and introduced in the Old West, so,
yeah.
It's funny how when you don't have as much availability and access to certain things, you can be more creative, so.
And my friend Andy Probert, who was on the design team of the DeLorean time machine, and he also designed ships for the first Star Trek movie and many other Star Trek series, the Next Generation, etc. Andrew did a slideshow presentation of the storyboards. He storyboarded that entire cut scene with Marty going under the atomic bomb test site.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, I should get him on and have him show that.
We would love to have really we would love to have all of them on if possible. We absolutely. Actually, I think I saw some of the storyboard. I had the Back to the Future book that came out in 2015. The entire visual I can't remember the name of it, but I have it.
Michael Glassstone's book.
Yeah,
it's a great book.
Unbelievable. It's a great coffee table book too. If you're a Seinfeld fan, it's a coffee table book for coffee tables, right? Do you remember that, Kramer?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get a Seinfeld reference in there. It's my daily Seinfeld reference. So another question for you, and I know this is a touchy subject to some people, and I've been conflicted over the years. Would you ever want to see it remade or rebooted or even a sequel to it in some way?
I've had many discussions about this over the years, and it always goes back to the Bobs that they, as long as they're alive, they've said there won't be a remake.
Yeah.
Though on the other hand, just about 3 weeks ago, I was in London for the Film and Comic-Con and stayed over a few extra days to see the Back to the Future musical, which, even though it's based on the first film, it's a slightly different story. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, the audience went nuts. The cast is having a blast. The music is terrific. The performances are fantastic. And it's headed to Broadway. So in a way, that's Back to the Future Part 4.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fans, if you're a real fan, you're going to love it. Absolutely.
I can't wait to see it. I've always said that, it was such a perfect movie, and, you don't want to draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa, right? But I look at it like in terms of sports, right? I look at it in terms of sports. So, to me, Back to the Future was probably the Mike Jordan of screenplays, right? And Michael Jordan had an amazing career, but we never condemn him or judge him for what he did with the Wizards, right? So to me, I'm like, why can't they reboot it or make a sequel, and we just not judge the previous films on, the reboot or the sequel. But that's me being selfish because I just like more of things that I love. So,
well, Spielberg just went up against that with his remake of West Side Story. And for me growing up, that was one of the first films I saw as a kid and just was transported. It was so well done with Bernstein and Jerome Robbins. It just the films felt so solid. It was like, why remake it? And I saw the remake and it was enjoyable, but it wasn't necessary, I thought, to remake it.
Yeah.
It was fantastic, stood alone. And it feels that way for a lot of things that they've remade over the years that have been stinkers.
Yeah.
The Lost in Space or Beverly Hillbillies. Hollywood has a tendency to eat itself.
Yeah.
Because people don't trust. Oh, this is already trusted, so there's money attached, I have a deal that I've got to remake it with the originator. There's all sorts of legal things with every project, and I think probably legally, the Bobs must have an agreement with Universal that as long as they're alive, Universal won't remake it. I've butted heads with others who said, no, if there's enough money there, Universal will make it whether they are a part of it or not. And I was like, I doubt it.
I think they told us all at the very end of Back to the Future 3 that they were not going to remake it. And I think it was so obvious when right when Doc was getting ready to leave in the train and Marty said, Doc, where are you going now? Back to the Future? And Doc looked at him and said, nope, already been there. And I think that was their way of saying, we're done. It's concluded, final. And I respect that. It's hard to to want to try to change what was so perfect, and it really, really was.
Well, there have been some really great versions of Part 4. I used to love reading the Back to the Future fan club newsletter. It was called the Hill Valley Telegraph, and it was in the early days of the fan club at BTTF.com. You can check that. The fan club is really a fantastic place for people to disseminate what news is going on with the films, the musical, the appearances, and so on and so forth. And some of the fans wrote some really great scripts for a Part 4 concept. And I've always thought, down the road, Jules and Verne's story, they probably covered it somewhat in the cartoons and the comic books. But, eventually someone's going to make a film thinking, nostalgia, and there's money there.
I stayed up.
In the meantime,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the fans around the world do a lot of really great stuff. See if I can get rid of this sidebar here. Please go away, sidebar. I don't know how to make that go away. But can you see this shot?
Yeah.
Yep.
We did a fundraiser called We're Going Back, where we went to all the places that we shot the films, the locations, with fans from around the world. And this was one of them. And the fans, as you can see here, are fantastic cosplayers. These are fans dressed as Griff's gang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holding me. See if I can get more of these going.
That's awesome.
There it is. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is as far as I know, my only old George cosplay. And it's a wonderful family in Denmark. Daddy's appeared at various events as Seamus McFly, as various characters. And here he's got his 1-year-old, his old George. He's the Ortholev. The child was not harmed when he did this. I think he was upside down for all of 10 seconds.
That's amazing.
Folks from around the world. These folks are from Europe, as are these from Germany. One of the fundraisers we did up in Sonora, in the Gold Country, where we shot Part 3. Here you see in the cowboy hat is Dangerous Bob Wilden, who was the prop master on the films. Marvin McIntyre, who played the Undertaker in Part 3, who I also worked with on Pale Rider, Clint Eastwood film, and Dean Cundy, along with the wonderful German fan who came out. That's me as Doc Brown.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Marty! Great Scott. During the pandemic, I did a Japanese Back to the Future fan club Zoom. And if you can see in all these almost 24 folk, they're all dressed as characters from Back to the Future.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So these fans from around the world have this gal Natasha and her son Seb are from Russia. They came out for the Back to the Future cruise. They came out for the Back to 1885 event. They're Uber fans. So you can see everyone played roles for the Hill Valley Festival for the Part 3 celebration. And this event was sponsored by Terry and Oliver Haller, who built their own time machine DeLorean, have taken it around the world and raised over $1 million for Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's Research Foundation. They got their DeLorean on the railroad track with the original train. The original train number is the number 3, and they put the 131 over it, plate over it.
Oh, wow.
And here, me as Mark Twain with some of those folk for the Back to the 1885 event. And we got to actually hoverboard for the We're Going Back event in 2015. The original stunt coordinator and stunt guys all came out. If you wanted to, you could take a hoverboard ride.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I'll tell you when we're not on the air how we did it.
Yeah.
So the fans have been really great. Here are a bunch of fans of Christopher Lloyd's that I met who dressed up as his different characters for Halloween. I got him to sign a picture to give to them.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
You know what I noticed, like an overwhelming theme, is that there's just so many different ages. It looks like there's no age demographic. They're all different. That's how far Back to the Future has touched everyone in a different way. Each generation.
Yeah, the new generations have found the film. I have shots with the tiniest Lorraine in just a couple months ago in Italy.
Yeah.
Her parents built her a little kitty time machine DeLorean, and she dresses as Lorraine. She's about this tall. And then
that's amazing.
I think one that I can find very quickly because it's totally worth it. Let's see if we got it. There he is. Yes. Oh. No. Hold on. There it is. I'm going back to the screen share here. Please bear with me.
If anything, I don't think they'll make a remake. I think they would do a reboot.
Yeah, they can't.
Like they would do a spin-off of something.
You can't remake
I don't.
that movie.
But that's what they've been doing. I mean, Top Gun is a reboot.
Well, Top Gun was Top Gun was a straight up sequel.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. They're not going to remake anything now. They've seen that it doesn't work.
Top Gun was brilliant. By the way, I've seen it 3 times.
Oh my gosh,
unbelievable!
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Look at that.
There's the world's tiniest Doc Brown.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
That's so awesome.
Amazing.
Let's see if I can. Nope, can't get it to go. Okay,
That's so cool.
there he is.
That is pretty cool, man.
And the female Marty.
Oh yeah.
And the German.
You never see anybody dress up like the car Biff. The car detailing. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Marvin Berry,
Like-
right? Yeah. That's awesome.
So, like I said, the fans have embraced me. Because I was kind of swept under the rug by the studio. I wasn't really able to promote my work in the movies very much, and it wasn't until 2008 that we did the first cast reunion in Hollywood, and Mike showed up at that unannounced. He was on a book tour, and he came on Sunday, and the crowd just went wild. And it was the first time James and Chris and Francis and Leah and I, Claudia and Mark had seen, I think, the ravages of Parkinson's on Mike Fox. And so it was really hard. We had a nice quality, better part of a half hour with him alone just to catch up. And then we kind of threw him at the fans, went to lunch, said, bye, Mike. But it was really the first reunion back then in 2008. And then in 2015, Mike did his very first Comic-Con as a guest at London Film and Comic-Con. And I was maybe partly responsible for that because the owner of that show asked me, how do I get Mike? How do I get Tom? And I told him I'd write them both and tell them, how well you treated me. And with Mike, I suggest you give his charity as much as you're going to give him.
Yeah.
Whatever. And they auctioned off a wonderful guitar that we all signed, and all that proceeds went to the charity. So he's been doing shows since. I don't think he travels overseas much anymore.
Yeah.
And Tom started doing shows. He never did shows until the following year, until 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, speaking of embracing you, we definitely appreciate you coming on the show today. We've got a very little bit of time left, but I have just a couple questions I have to ask you, right? Number one, you spent some time on Saved by the Bell. I'm a huge Saved by the Bell fan. If you could give us maybe about 45 seconds to a minute of how that was. I mean, that was, I saw you were the high geek, right, on the Zack Attack episode. So I got to ask you, how was that working with that cast and crew?
I was. It was fun. They're sweet kids. Let's see if I can refresh people's memories with a couple shots here. And open. Doesn't always open like I want, but here we go. I went in, auditioned. I knew they needed an uber nerd. So I went in with my hair standing on end and those thick glasses.
You remember that episode?
Yeah.
I've watched so much Saved by the Bell. That is,
Oh my gosh.
oh my God, that's amazing.
So originally, I hid the hair going straight up like that under a fez.
Yeah.
And Casey Kasem, who was the other guest star that week, went to the producer and said, "Can't let him wear that fez. No, it's insulting to my religion. He was Muslim." I was like, I'm doing a comedy bit. I'm not. No offense to the religion of Islam, but I'm just taking off the fez to reveal this fright wig. That producer said, "Nah, I gotta ask you to lose it." We're like, "Oh, great." And I was going to take the magic retainer out of the fez too.
Yeah.
But instead I made it come out of the spittoon, which was conveniently located there. It was nice being able to work on that show. Dustin was, a sweet kid. And,
Look at him screech.
I was just, very sad to hear of his dad abusing his money share, and then of course Dustin's untimely death just 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I've seen it dubbed in Italian. It's pretty funny in Italian.
yeah. I'm a huge fan of Saved by the Bell, so I had to ask you that. And one last question before we go, because my son wanted me to ask you this, and I have to do it. Why did Doc Brown have 2 watches?
One to time his eggs, and because he was in multiple time periods, probably, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You have to ask.
It was he wanted me to ask you that. So Monroe, if you're when you watch this, I asked George the question. So, but Jeff, we really appreciate you coming on. These guys in the studio love when we stick to.
I wish I had it to show you. I just received a fan fabricated for me a replica of my future watch, of what George is wearing, the double watch in the future, the double band.
Yeah.
He just presented me that just last month. I cherish it. I just have it stashed away. I can't run and get it to show you right now.
Well, look, George, we absolutely appreciate you coming on the show. They always like us to stick to the timeline, as you can appreciate that. But we really do appreciate how you guys, showing up and taking the time to be with us here today. And hopefully we can get you back on sometime to discuss, more things as well, because there's a lot more stuff that I'd love to talk to you about, and Shane would love to talk to you about. And we really appreciate it. And everybody out there who's listening, hope you guys had fun with us today on Prop Culture, and we'll see you next time. See you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you in the future.
See you in the future.
Thank you, guys.
See you.